Hello friends, welcome back to MissionViewfinder. Today I'm going to be sharing with you what it was like for me as a teenager coming to a foreign country and the different aspects of that experience, but especially how my time being here in this country in a foreign culture, trying to serve God here, really impacted my personal Christian experience and my walk with God. I think one of the first things I would have to say was that as a young person, I was pretty optimistic of what life in the mission field was going to look like. I mean, I'd read lots of mission stories, and I just thought this was going to be one big grand adventure. And some of you have heard me talk about that a little bit before. But I really did think that I was going to do great things, and it was going to be a grand experience. And it was just going to be like smooth sailing. Wrong. Reality, on the other hand, of what life was actually like here in Thailand was very different than my dreams, though. And looking back on it, I'm actually very thankful that it was, because the life that I had imagined having when we got here was a life of bliss and success and a whole bunch of things that I think would have just only increased my confidence in myself, which I already tend to be kind of self-confident sometimes, most of the time, and I didn't realize that, how much that was a part of my thinking in my life. So things were just a lot more real than I imagined, and I was the same person I had always been. It wasn't like I magically became some person who was, really capable of doing all these things that were before me. And it was a very eye-opening experience as I began to see that I wasn't so unselfish. I wasn't so willing to just go out there and get to know these kids that I couldn't talk to. Because, suddenly I was surrounded with people that I didn't know how to talk to. I didn't know their language. They could hardly speak mine. And then I just kind of wanted to hide. And I think I was actually probably going through a lot of culture shock. I didn't realize that. I never would have admitted that I was going through culture shock. But I really wanted to just stay in our house all day. We had a month between when we arrived and when school started. And I really didn't want to go out and be with the students or the staff very much. I just wanted to hide out in our house. And then classes started. Teaching English was completely I felt like I was drowning, and I didn't know what I was doing. And I think more than I was asking God to help me and do it through me, I was just asking Him to get me out of the situation. I honestly don't think I ever thought I just want to go back to America, but I really wanted somebody else to come teach English. In my imagination, whatever I would end up doing in Thailand was going to be fun, kind of, and teaching English was anything but fun in my experience up to that point. And so it was I just went out of this. This is so hard. Speaking of, more than we can handle, it was way more than I could handle. But it was months before I finally got to the point of realizing if I just let God do it through me and I let Him work through me, I don't have to carry this burden. I can do this, I can actually figure things out, and I don't have to be stressed beyond belief, every single day. I don't have to be stressed to tears every day. So that was a very growing experience. And like I said, I don't think I ever really wanted to just leave Thailand and go back to America. But it was a while before I really felt like I want to stay. At first, it's just kind of so hot and sticky, and we got to our house, and there was no running water for the first few days, and the running water there was sometimes was really muddy, and you're eating rice and stuff with your rice, and you're getting 2 meals a day that are really far apart, and you're hungry half the time, and just so many different things that we were trying to adjust to. So it was definitely not comfortable, it was definitely not fun to begin with. But that was actually a really crucial part of my growing experience now that I look back on it. Something I should mention is that I had a very interesting experience when it came to learning the language, in the sense that I feel like I was a lot like a little child who was just trying to sometimes imitate what people said, even though I didn't really understand what they were saying. And it wasn't until a while later that I realized that I was copying the way that people said things and the things that people said, sometimes without fully understanding, but also in ways that I would never have said something in English. But I was just copycatting. And I really began to see like just how much, when you come into a new culture, it's very easy to feel the need to, learn to talk, speak the language and stuff like that, and not realize that it can actually be very easy to take on ways of speaking and ways of communicating that you never would have considered appropriate in your mother tongue. It's just, that's the way you see people doing things, and you start copycatting them, and you just, especially as a teenager, it's pretty easy to just adjust to things like that and do as people do. And when it came to learning the language, I must say it was quite the humbling experience a lot of times when you're a teenager and you know how to speak your mother tongue, but suddenly you're like this child that doesn't know how to talk. And the particular people group that my family was working with, they tend to laugh if you make a mistake. It was a humbling experience, and yet I'm very thankful that God helped me come to the point where it was like, you know what, I just have to laugh with them. And if I make a mistake, try to figure out what it was that I did wrong so I can do it right next time. Can you think of any other questions people might want answers to about my experience when I was young over here?
Well, yeah. You came when you were, 16? Like, when you got older and, more college age and all of that, did you think or worry about who you would marry? There was no, what was your thinking about that?
Good question. To be perfectly honest, I had plenty of thoughts on that subject, too many thoughts on that subject, but I can't say I was ever worried about it, I'm gonna have to go back to the States to find somebody to marry. I don't think I ever thought that. Funny thing was, shortly before we got in a relationship, somebody asked me, and this is when I'd already decided that I really should marry somebody that was from my own culture. Somebody asked me, so when are you gonna get married? And I was like, well, there aren't even really any guys that ever talk to me except one. And her answer was, well, it only takes one. Anyway, I think sometimes we worry about, there's gonna be nobody, to meet over there in the mission field, but it only takes one. And God is completely capable of bringing that one person. He doesn't have to bring a dozen options over here for you to have somebody to marry. He can bring just the right one. That may be the only one you really know, but that could be the one that you marry. So you never know. God has ways. In respect to how life here in Thailand really impacted my Christian experience, my personal walk with God, though, I don't have anything to compare it with, honestly, so it's not like I can say if I had stayed in America, life would have been such and such way. Or, if I hadn't come and I hadn't had these experiences, I wouldn't be walking with God. I can't say that. But at the same time, there's a lot of experiences that I had that I'm really quite sure really did impact my walk with God in very major ways. And most of that really was just being in a setting where my goal was to be serving God, to be working for Him, to be ministering to people, and often having my defects exposed. That was something that I really did not expect, but the people around me were really like a lot of little children are. They could see through the mask I was trying to put on. They could tell if I was actually happy. They could tell if I actually liked them or was being kind and unselfish, or if I was just trying to do what looked good. And so there was just a lot of things that I had exposed in my character, and I got to the point where I realized I can't hide who I really am. I can't just make it look like I'm a good Christian and not actually walk with God personally. So that was one of the ways that I know life here really impacted me. There were a lot of other ways, and I can't fully describe everything. Like, there's a lot that I went through. There was a lot of ups, there was a lot of downs, and I guess I would just say the biggest thing really was learning that I can't do it. That there's nothing good in me, and that it all comes from God. God is the one that can change people's hearts. It's not something I can do at all, ever. But He wants to do it through me, and there's joy in that. There's joy in actually letting Him work through you. And that was something that a lot of times in America, like, I wanted to hold back. I didn't want to step out and do what was uncomfortable. But here it was like, God helped me to grow beyond that and actually do things that weren't comfortable and be changed, because that's ultimately what He wanted to do in my life, and that's what my life needed, was to be changed. Thank you so much for joining me today, friends. This has been kind of an effort to explain what my experience has been like here in Thailand, especially as a teenager and when I first got here. But I'm sure I haven't answered everybody's questions. If you have more specific questions, please leave them in the comments below. If there's enough questions, we might just do a second part to this. But I really hope this was a blessing to you. And if you know young people who are thinking about getting into the mission field, encourage them to go. Encourage them, though, mostly to seek God and to let Him work through them, and to not allow the challenges that they face to ruin their life, but rather to draw them closer to God. So I hope this was an encouragement to you, regardless of your age, and I hope we'll see you next week here on Mission Viewfinder.